Hello, and thank you for using the property and loan evaluation tool. Before we get started, just a few things on configuration management, which simply means saving your file off and how to rename it. So if you've received the file, it should look something like what's on the screen, called Template Property and Loan Eval Tool. And then there's some numbers and letters after that. That represents TVer 278, which is the template version. That's the master version that you're using. Yours may be 279, could be a smaller number, but this is the version that I'm using to explain. And then at the very tail end is the rev number, rev01. That means that's the user number. As you continue to enter data and save it, you'll up that number in case you don't want to lose data in case your file goes down. You can always go back to a previous version. What I recommend is once you save off the template, put it in a safe place. I would create a new folder and just simply, you can name it whatever you want. I'm going to name it template, and then I'm going to take a copy, right click. These are all basic Windows functions. Copy that file, go into template, and I'm going to paste it. So now I've preserved off a pristine copy of the template. I'm going to go back to the original place where the file was saved, and I'm going to rename it. So my recommendation is to name it in a way that will show, represent maybe your location. And so you can click here. I'm going to highlight over this, and I'm just going to pick a nice town, Huntsville, AL for Alabama. And there is the first version of the tool that I'm going to be using. If you get an error like this, maybe there's another window open, or if the file's open, if you accidentally clicked it, just simply close out any other windows that may have opened and rename this. Okay, now we're ready to start. So when I open this up, when I save it, I'll do normally a save, then a save as, and only change the number at the tail end, the rev number, rev01. So I'll just do a simple example. We'll open this up, and you may not be able to see all of this on your screen, but here it is. And now I will simply do a file. Well, normally when I edit the text, I'll do a save first, that little box here, and then do a file, a save as, and then if you can't see the full version number, here it is. I'm going to put my cursor there and change that 1 to a 2. Save it. Now if I happen to close this out, you'll see that rev2 has been saved, and that's so we'll continue that pattern as we start editing. I've taken that file that we just saved and I've opened it up, and I want to go over a few things so we can get started here. One is basic Excel navigation, and then how this tool is set up. So using the basic navigation skills for Excel, you have the top menu and the bar across the top here. You'll notice some of these areas are grayed out, which means they're not selectable. If you want to change something, you simply go to that various tab, and some things allow you to make selections, others do not. I generally stay in the home tab unless I'm doing something special. When you're looking at the tool, there are multiple tabs across the bottom that you can see across here. And the first tab on the left is instructions. As you go across, there's other data points that you can open up, and we're going to go through each of these. Some of the tabs have been pre-populated with fictitious data, and I'm going to show you how to make all those entries. And when you're moving around on the tabs, you use these two buttons on the left here to move the whole tab section so you can get back to instructions. Also, on the lower right, if you want to make the screen larger, you can use this plus and minus tool down here. That's part of Excel. Or you can press the control button and scroll in and out to change the size. So I like to stay around 100%, which is noted down here in the corner. Sometimes I go down to 90 or something lower. So now we're going to start, we're going to look at the instructions and start entering data. As you look at the instruction tab, which is the lower leftmost tab, it explains what the tool is about, how to use it. You can click and scroll down. Again, scrolling if you have a scroll roller on your mouse, or you can use the scroll bar to the right here. And this shows the various tabs with links to those tabs and what they're used for. And below there's some limitations that are described here and some cautionary things of what to do and not to do. And then some protections that are in the spreadsheet. And then here's a description on using the good configuration management, or the way to save a file like I showed earlier. And at the very bottom, there's contact if you need help with the tool or have recommendations, you can use that. So this is the instruction tab, and again, basically you want to look at the getting started, follow these instructions, and I'm going to explain all this. And then if you want, you can also go directly to the tab using the hyperlink, or you could click the tab below. I'm going to go one by one on each of these tabs, starting at the left and move to the right. The first tab next to the instructions is the dashboard. So I'm going to click on that tab. And after all of your other selections are made in all the other tabs, here's sort of a very high level overview of your information. Now, if it's not all showing up on the screen, again, you can use the scroll to make it smaller to fit. You can also select the area and do a print. So if you select the area, then you'll do a file and then print, and then you can make your selection. Now, using the print, there's different selections over here to make it fit on the page. The scaling is a nice way to get everything to fit on one page. Of course, that looks a little odd. If you're going to print, you can change the orientation, but these are basic functions of Excel. Okay, so there's not much to edit here on the dashboard other than this one, which is the property that you're going to be showing on the dashboard. All of the cells are color coded. The cells that are available to be edited, typed in, selected, or you can double click sometimes, or sometimes you can do an F2 on your keyboard and then type it in above. They function in different ways, but it ends up having the same results. So any cell that's in this light colored green is going to be open for editing or selection. The next tab over is the long summary, which is similar to the dashboard, except it gives you a lot more information. I'm going to scroll down here, and the way to read this is here's the title of the information, and then your data is off to the right, and if there's any special notes or alerts, they're in the next column. Something I didn't point out, which is also on the dashboard, is this graph. As you enter data, the graph will adjust until finally when you're all done, the graph is going to represent where your numbers are at, and I can explain that after we get some data entered in. Again, we're on the long summary tab. This will be correctly populated after you've made all your other selections in the other tabs. The only major selectable item here again is the property, and you want to select the one in this case. There probably should, by the time you make all your entries, there's only one to select, but this will change over time. Also, I wanted to point out that this red triangle in the corner of some of the cells, if you just hover the mouse over, there's a lot of pop-ups that show information about what should be in that cell or something to be aware of. The other area you can edit manually is these distances and times to work and to the local airport. And if something changes color like this, that indicates that there is an error or a warning. In this case, if you read through it, it tells you where to make sure that select the data correctly. And at the bottom, there's some summaries. So again, here's some comments. If you hover over where that red triangle is, you'll get some additional information. And some of these tabs also have a hyperlink. If you want to go back to instructions, you simply click the button and it takes you back to the instructions tab. Now, if you want to, you can again use these hyperlinks to go to different tabs. The ones that are shown here are the major data entry points. And there's one here for long summary, so if I click that, it takes us back to the long summary tab. Moving forward, we're getting to the major data entry tabs, which are in these blue tabs. So I'm going to start generally from left to right and go tab by tab by tab, but you can always go back and change information in any of the tabs at any time. So we're going to go to the property listing attributes. This is the tab where you can select. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. It's a pretty large tab, a lot of information. Again, the cells in either light green or dark green, you can make entries, or some green like this may show an error where you can make an adjustment somewhere else. The way this is set up is on the top. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can read this. This top row are all the headers for data that you're going to enter below. The major two sections to start with are these two rows here. In these rows, you're going to enter your preferences of the property. So you can start in this green area. I happen to enter in, I prefer a flat property, single story, 1 acre. You can change that. You simply click on the cell, and let's say you want desire a property that is sloped. You like some terrain or so or flat. So that's a preference and a general description. Okay, moving to the right, here are your preference values, and I'm going to use this scroll bar down here, and you'll see only the right information scrolls. I've locked these columns over here because it contains information that you need to see probably all the time, and you get pretty far over. You're wondering, now what was the property? Well, you can look back over here. Another thing you can do is completely enlarge the size of the viewing area across your entire screen. Right now I have it sized so it fits most screens. I think maybe going forward I'm going to switch the screen size, and you'll be able to see a little bit better. But let's just get started here before I change the screen size. So we're city and town. Again, these are preferences. So this row here, you enter your preference, and then below it, if there's any associated notes. So if you want to live near the airport, you can say, near airport, and then the note is not too close to avoid noise. Okay, and you can enter in if you want to be in Texas, and Texas, whatever you want. You can make all your entries. I happen to be choosing the Huntsville, Alabama area. Then you can select the value of the property, the asking price. You don't want to exceed a number. Again, I pre-populated this with some fictitious data, but let's say you want to go to 300. That's what you'd like. And then, of course, the comment I entered, lower is better. So let me resize the screen and go through a few more of these so you get the gist of it. And again, right now we're just doing the preferences, and then we're going to enter the actual property data below that we're going to be looking at. I've resized the screen so that more of it shows up. This is the same tab we were just on, the property listing attributes. And you can see if I scroll below here, these are going to be all the properties that I want to evaluate. The top section is our preferences, and we have the header at the top. So as you go across one by one on these green cells, you enter in the data. Generally, in some cases, uh, if it's bright green, that means you really need to pay attention and add data. If it's light green, then you can still enter data. It just some different color coding here. So if you know the realtor's name, Mr. Realtor, and the link, you can put a link in, and if there's an MLS number, and you simply go across all the way and you look at the titles and you enter your data below. So these are all the titles of data, and I'm going to go across here just to show you what some of them are, and I can zoom in just a little bit so you can see a little bit clearer. Number of bedrooms, roofing, waterfront, there's just a lot of selections. Garage, parking, goes to some interior. Let me zoom back out a little bit so we get more of that on the screen. Okay, different types of windows, walk-in closets, master bedroom, what's in the kitchen, everything to dishwasher, garbage disposal, washer, dryer, ceiling fans, AC, the patio if there is one, a pool, any fencing, alarm system. So all the way across, you want to enter in all of your preferences. And if you want, you can add in a note. So let's see the quality of neighborhood. You want a new neighborhood, let's say. Here's a case where I can either type it in or make a selection. When you select a cell, if there's something selectable, you'll see this little drop down arrow. There is one exception to that, and that is and being able to see that drop down. As I move the screen around, you'll see this row here is locked, so it can't move. If you have a selectable area, cell like this, if that cell is adjacent, or if this one happens, in some cases, if this is the cell, because of this barrier, you may not see it, but you can certainly type it in or move the screen around so you can see it. So new, let's see, quality new, and with paved roads. Okay, it may be obvious, but just in case, again, you can select this. You know, if you want an older section, that again, this is just a preference. Okay, so you go all the way across, and for each one, it's optional for entering your preferences. So now that you have your preference list all set up, you want to start entering your properties, an actual property that you go to visit. So we're going to show that here, and we'll go through a simple scenario and let you choose to see that. Now we'll be entering the actual property data. So you can enter this data before you go to the property. Some of it you'll need to know, you know, some printed information, or when you actually go to the property, you can enter it in. The first two rows I've already pre-populated, and so you can either you can leave that data there as a reference, or you can delete it and type over it, type in new data, or type over one at a time. To delete data, you simply highlight the cells like this and you press your delete button. There's multiple ways in Excel to do the same thing. That happens to be one way I do it. Again, you can only change the data in a green cell, so either light green or the dark green. If there's another cell that's either white or colored, like these two are here, if I try to double click, I'll get a message saying that it's protected and you can't change that. So I'm going to do use an undo and put that data back in, and I'm going to start entering a new property on property number 3, which is in Excel row 10. So one by one, I'm going to start at the left and work my way to the right. And it's important to enter in as much as data as possible. Some data points are very critical because some data on each tab is used in another tab in some way. So if you have a missing piece of data, it's not going to show up or be used correctly in another tab. So on the left here, again, we're under the short description, and I can say, flat, grassy area, some details, it has a ditch in the back. All right, whatever you want to enter in. You can enter in your own rating of 1 to 10. How do I like this property? I think it's a 7. It looks pretty good. These cells here give an auto calculation of a match of what you're entering on this row versus your preferences. It's not a perfect calculation. The items have to match perfectly to be part of the score. So you continue on, and let's say I'm on Test Street, and the town is, let's say, Huntsville, Alabama. So I just continue going across all the way, entering in each piece of data for that particular property at that address. And let's say instead of Test Street, I want to put in the address is 123 Test Street. Okay, so you continue that across. So after you've entered in all of that data, you move to the next tab. So this is listed as discretionary costs. There's another term that can be used, maybe a slight bit of a misnomer, but these are costs that you anticipate that you currently have before you move into a property, and then after you move into a property. There's 3 different scenarios. I happen to be using scenario 1 for expenses after I move into the property. And those expenses, I do not include the loan amount or anything like that. There's lawn service, alarm services if you have it, tree trimming, and you can go all the way down. There's quite a few entries here. You want to enter in either a monthly value or an annual value. So for instance, if they charge by the month, you can enter that information here, or they say, well, one flat fee of 500 for the whole year. You can enter in 500, and then you'll get an alert, and it tells you a little bit about it. You can't have double entries. It's either monthly or annual. So I'll just delete the monthly and leave the annual. The next scenario, in this case, I'm using for, let's say, my current situation. So if I'm living in an apartment or I've just moved and I'm temporarily in a hotel, that's what I'm using this for. So these are expenses before I move into the house. I'm using scenario 1 for those after I move into the house. And then scenario 3, you can put anything in here you want. You can have another scenario of after you move into a house or another current living condition. Maybe this is scenario 2 is I'm in an apartment. Scenario 3 is, hey, I'm with family members or a friend before I move into a house. But you can mix match. But what happens is these values are going to be selectable in some of the other tabs. So you want to try to fill this out as best as possible. This alert column, these are not critical alerts. It simply indicates that the values between the 3 are either the same or they're not the same. It's just an alert because if you want to have the same values, it'll tell you if it's the same or not the same. And you want to go through and fill all of that out. Now we're going to move on to the next tab, which is potential closing cost list. You may receive some of this data from your realtor, or you may have the similar data from another property. And so this is really just a user worksheet. These numbers are not directly linked to other tabs, other than you want to make sure you select the right property for what you're filling out. As you enter properties in some of these selection tabs, again, you can actually type in here whatever you want. Well, some of them will. This one apparently doesn't allow you. If it doesn't allow you, you'll get the error. Otherwise, you'll have to select. As you add properties to the list, it'll add to the selection options. So we were working on 123 Test Street, but I'm going to really go back and work off example 1 because a lot of that data has been pre-populated. So I'm going to select that. So you want to enter in all of these values, and these are the typical fees for closing. If there are additional fees, you can bundle them into one particular area. But again, these are generally, it's a worksheet that you can use on another tab. Now that we've entered in what we believe is the correct closing cost or potential closing cost, we're going to go to the next tab, which is the actual closing cost. This tab is the numbers in here are going to be used in some of the strong calculations to produce our final results. It is important that these numbers be correct or as accurate as possible because, as mentioned, these numbers are going to be used in summaries and totals in other tabs. So again, here are 3 examples, example data that I've already entered, and we are on the closing cost tab. So you can either reuse, again, any one of these rows to overwrite it or delete it and type in new or add a new row. Before, we entered in a value for a street address in the very beginning called 123 Test Street. You'll notice it now shows up in this list of selectable items for the address. But at the beginning, before we select that, you're going to need to enter a title company. Each of these selections need to be absolutely unique. So you don't want to type in title company 103 again, but let's say we were going to put in a new row for 103 Test Street, and you'll see this auto populates to Huntsville. And we're going to use the same title company as up here, but we will need to enter in a unique name. So what you could do is enter title company, let's say 103 for Test Street, and I'll just abbreviate that. So it's all unique. So if that's the row you want to enter data in, you would just simply go across entering all your data. You can either type it in or you can do a copy paste. So let's say you want to do a copy paste, this 554 number, and you want to put it down here. You can either simply type it in using the keyboard 554, hit return or enter, and there it is. But let me delete that, and let's say you want to copy it. It's very important that when you copy data, you do a copy paste values, and I'll show you how to do that. So highlight the cell, I'm going to right click, select copy, put the mouse cursor and click on the cell where I want to copy it to. I'm going to right click again, and don't select paste. Under paste options, you want to use this 123, which is values. The reason for that is these cells have certain conditional formatting, which could be messed up if you don't do it in that way. So you could also select, well, all of this is the same. So you could copy a whole group of cells, copy, and select the beginning, right click, paste values, and it'll paste the values across the board here. So, but let's go back. I'm going to use example, I'm going to stick with example 101 Hills. So you're going to go across each one of these, enter in your data. Each piece of data, such as the title insurance or title fee, attorney fees, these are the items on probably a list you'll get from your realtor, and you enter in the values, and then there's a selection for each of those values. You'll notice the yes, no here, the yes, no here. What that says is, do you want to include that piece of data or that value as part of your loan? In other words, it'll be rolled into the loan. Some loans or type of loans will allow you to do that, some will not. So in this case it's not, so I'm going to just select no for each one. Now, even if you select no, there's still an overriding option to select later on, but the gist of it is to go across and enter in all your dollar values if you're responsible for home inspection and so forth. Now, you can also use an equation. So, for instance, let's say on, and I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. Let's say for the title insurance, for some reason, it is 10% of 100,000. So what you would do is you could calculate that on the side and enter the number, or you could highlight the cell, pressing the equal sign, which means you're going to enter an equation, and say 0.1, which is 10%, times 100,000, and then hit the enter button, and it'll come up with the number. If that's and if you click on it again, just single click, you'll see the equation up at the top over here in the menu bar, or you can double click and see the equation here, and let's say it's 110, you can do that as well. Another way is to do a reference to your potential closing cost list. So title insurance for Title Company 101. So what you can do is press equals. You're going to enter an equation here, but now you're going to select the potential closing cost list, and here's the title insurance. If that was the number, you would click there once and hit enter, and now that value is in that cell. So if you click that cell once, you can see there's a reference here to that other tab, or you can double click and you can see the reference here. So you can use equations or entering the absolute value. I like to use the potential closing list, cost list. This is my worksheet. These numbers are not going to be used anywhere except for what I select, and you can use those numbers here. And I'm going to scroll to the right, and you march across on all these various fees that they may want to apply to your loan or for closing. Now there is a section, other fees, and if you hover your mouse over, remember the red triangle at the corner, it pops up. You don't want to click on the cell, just hover your mouse there. It'll pop up this comment of what other type of fees you may want to bundle together to that one big number. And so maybe one of these, maybe three, maybe all. And so you want to make sure you don't use the PMI, because that's probably used in another area. And then here is your list of totals at the end. For all the items you selected as yes, which everyone is no, so it's 0. Total not include, so the total of all the no's are here. The total of selected yeses and no's and so forth across the board. So for instance, this 0, if I selected yes here, that number is going to show up here, and all the other calculations will happen automatically. So let me go back to selecting no. And so that's all you need to enter for this tab. This is very important, big selection. And let me scroll across here, and you want to make sure your address is selected correctly and your title company. So that's your closing list. Now, there are other items at the top here that you could select. I'm buying or selling. You know, generally this spreadsheet is for someone buying a property. Also, in general, there may be a yellow box. These are user notes, some indications of how to use the tab or what to enter. You can scroll across and look at that. I'm going to scroll back a little bit, and then there's some hyperlinks. If you want to go to the instructions, you're not sure, you can go back there. But this is from the closing costs. So now that you've entered all of your closing costs, and by the way, I'm going to show a total copy and paste. Let's say for Title Company 103 for Test Street is all the same information from Example Hills. So I can't copy this value because it's a protected cell, but I can't copy everything else. So I can click once, and I can either click and hold and slide the mouse across to highlight everything, or I can click once and press shift right arrow, and basically I'm going to highlight all the information I want to copy. So we're back to here, and I'm going to then, now that everything has been highlighted, I'm just going to scroll so you can see that it's highlighted. I'm going to right click on it and say copy, and you can see these marching ants around all of those cells. I'm going to use the scroll bar down here to go to the left, and I want everything from here forward. So I'm going to select that cell, paste values. Now every value is now pasted in there, and I haven't ruined any of the conditional formatting. So that's how you fill out the closing costs. And now we're going to go on to the next tab. We are now switching to the loan calculator tab, and if you look across the bottom, you'll see the loan calculator tab. There's a lot more tabs we're going to be going through, so remember, if you want to scroll across those tabs, use the arrow buttons in the lower left corner. These are standard Excel items on Excel, so I'm going to click the arrow if I can, and you see as I click that arrow, it shifts all of the tabs to the left when I click the right arrow, so I'm scrolling right. And now we are on the loan calculator tab. The loan calculator tab, I'm going to scroll up and down. You may be able to see this. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. And so the header is fixed. And if I scroll to the right using the tab over here, we have another fixed area, and you can scroll across and see these various things. Basically, in the loan calculator tab, again, this is just an indicator. You have different options. You want to select your house purchase tool. Across the top in row 1 of Excel, there are different values, and you can actually change the values in green. These are used for various purposes. The tool actually can be used to purchase an item like a vehicle or trailer, but for house sales tax is not applicable. For right now, the main purpose is for a property purchase. And I'm going to scroll across to the right so you can see some of these header values. There's generally there's values or averages that are selected across here. These averages are going to be able to use for selections below, which I'll show you in a minute. You don't have to enter values here, but it's good to know what the average is, such as property tax rates and PMI, which is the personal private mortgage insurance. And so let me scroll back to the left and let's get started. All of the values selected here are very, very critical. It's important that you get the numbers correct. You want to select your property. Right now we're using example 01 Hills Drive. But again, if you wanted to select the property we used before on a new row, right, you click it, see that down arrow, and you could select 103 Test Street. And when you do that, you see it kind of changes the color from that bland green to, you know, a more deeper green. Remember, everything in green is open to being edited or selectable. So I'm going to go back to using example 01 Hills Drive. Vehicle mileage doesn't matter. Okay, so we have the asking price. If you're looking at a property, they're asking, in this case, let's say 177,000, and this is a bit of an oddity. So sometimes people ask above the asking price. Unfortunately, due to the calculations, you have to enter this as a negative value. So if you scroll, move your mouse up, and this will explain if you're asking more than the if you're offering more than the asking price. So in this case, the offer is $5,000 over the asking price. And so here would be the total base price that's agreed upon for the sale. Remember, only items in green can be edited. If you double click and try to edit, you get the message. And so you want to go across shipping fees, doesn't matter. Um, if you're going to put a down payment, cash down, you want to enter that amount here. Uh, Again, you can overwrite these values. You know, if you're going to offer 15,000, you just overtype that. In this case, it's going to be 10,000. So it recalculates everything for you. This is a very important value, the appraised value. When you have an appraisal done, they're going to say, well, even though you're offering 177, the property appraises at 200,000, or it could be 150,000. So if it's 150, you want to enter 150,000, right? So let's go back to the 200. And now we come to taxes. So basically, as you go down each of these columns, you want to answer the questions on what the values are. So for instance, for property taxes, up above there is a value here for average property tax. You can select to use the average, none, or the actuals. If you select the average, it's going to update down here, and you may not see that right now, but it'll affect the calculations. In this case, I'm going to use the actuals, which says, hey, I've looked this up, or was provided this number to me by the realtor, and here's the annual property tax. And you want to make sure you look at whether these entries are annual or monthly. So property taxes in this case are listed as annual, and then it recalculates it by monthly. And you can't change that monthly, it's based on what's selected here. If you have home insurance, which is usually required unless you buy full cash out, averages your home insurance. Now, if you want to put the property taxes and insurance to the lender into escrow, meaning they're going to add that to your base loan payment. So if your loan comes out to be without anything added on, let's say the loan is $1,000, and the only thing added on is this 83 per month, it's going to be $1,083 that you'll need to send to the lender. So there's a difference between your basic mortgage payment and what you're sending to the lender, because what you send to the lender is going to be the mortgage payment plus any add-ons, which could be property taxes into escrow. And so you just want to continue on down here. This is an important selection. We entered our title company information before, and so here's our selection list. And remember, you got these up down arrows to select, and we're going to select the title company 101. Now I'm going to just for a moment go back to closing costs tab, just to the left at the bottom. I'm at the bottom. I'm going to select closing costs. Title company 101 Example Hills. That's the one that we've just selected with all this data. Is now, I'm going to go back to the loan calculator, is now used because we've selected that here. This is a very important step. So again, you're going to go to closing costs, use actuals or an average. Let's say you don't know the numbers, but you want to get an average. You can do an estimate. So you want to go on down and you want to say include closing costs in loan. Yes or no. Right now it's no. This particular case, let's say this is, I believe, conventional, where they won't allow additions, add-ons to be included in the loan. So I say no. If it was another type of loan, perhaps they do, and you could say yes, and it'll add in all those numbers. But right now we're going to go back to no, and that will be calculated in future calculations here. I'm going to scroll across. Remember, all the data in this peach color are auto-calculated. If I was to double-click that to try to change it, again, nope, can't change it. So those are auto-calculated. An important number to note is your loan to value, or what's known as LTV. If you highlight or hover your mouse over, you'll see the comment. Normally, PMI is required if your loan to value or LTV is less than 80%. So what you can do is it'll tell you whether it's required because it's 86% right now. It needs to be less than 80. And so then the PMI average rate, double click that, is 167. If you want to use the actuals, I'm going to scroll to the right here a little bit more. Again, you can either select use the average, or and it'll recalculate and use the numbers as the average. Or if the actuals, you were told, hey, your PMI is going to be 250 a month, so then it'll use those numbers. And then to the right, you enter in your initial loan rate. In this case, I've entered 2.75%. Now there is an option to use to do buy down buy down the rate, which means you pay X number of dollars up front to reduce that loan rate. So there is an average of I don't know, $1,000 per quarter point or something like that. You have to look it up, but the lender can tell you that number. But if you want to use a buy down rate, and right now we have it selected as no, we're not going to use the buy down rate, but let's say you do. So let's say it is you want to pay $1,000, and the new rate after the buy down, let's say it goes down by a quarter point, so 2.5. And so this is the number that's going to be used for the calculations because you've said no and you're using the 2.75. If you say yes, then you're going to be using the 2.5 rate. So yes, and you'll notice that changes the rate to 2.5. Right now we're going to say no, we're not going to use buy down, even though we entered the numbers. Will not be used in future calculations. Years of loan. Your property could be a 10, 15, 20, 30-year loan. In this case we said 30. If you enter in the number of 20, it'll readjust all the numbers appropriately. In this case we're going to use 30, and you'll see these values update automatically. And you keep marching down, HOA fees, etc. fees, enter in all your data. Now, discretionary scenario. Remember, we entered into our discretionary costs different scenarios. This is why it's important to get that information correct, because here you're going to select a particular scenario that matches with you buying this particular piece of property or potentially buying it. So I'm going to go back on the lower left here. I'm going to select discretionary costs. Remember, let me go back to the right here. Your options are scenario 1, 2, or 3. Let me go back to the lower left tab, discretionary costs, and we're moving away from the loan calculator tab, going to discretionary cost tab. Let me select that. These are the 3 scenarios. So in this case, I've entered in, and this is my text that I've entered in, used in loan calculator tab, future house situation expenses. So this is the, and if I hover my mouse here, you can see the description. This is after I buy the house, these are my real expenses, living expenses, beside the actual mortgage itself. So let's go back to the loan calculator tab, and you want to select, okay, scenario 1 is what I'm using for this case. Now if I selected scenario 2, you'll see the number changed, but scenario 2 is not for this purpose. So there's a little bit of understanding that needs to be done there. So using discretionary calculations, yes, because generally this is yes. There's not a good reason to use no. I know there's a no down here, but there's not a good reason for not including that, because this is going to allow you to calculate feature calculations for affordability. So generally, this should always be yes. Scroll across here a little bit more, and then here are your totals. So your discretionary monthly costs, amount to be financed, that's the total amount. Your base monthly payment, mandatory costs additional to that, a grand total. This column here shows your total out-of-pocket costs of closing. In other words, you're going to have to write a check for $19,000 here to get through closing. And then it adds in additional monthly obligations, and it kind of amortizes it out either monthly and annually. So these are very, very important numbers you need to enter in to get the calculations correct. I know there's a lot, but this is important if you want a good answer at the end. And the answer at the end is, can I afford this property, or when can I afford it, and can I continue with the payments? So now we're going to go on to the next section. Now that you've entered your loan calculations and all the data, we're going to move on to the purchase cash flow analysis. The purchase cash flow analysis tab, as you can see I've selected at the bottom, shows allows entries for your personal income, cash in the bank, and other assets. You can make multiple selections on the property and eventually get an answer at the bottom. I'm scrolling here to see, can you afford this to buy this property, and when you can afford to buy the property. So I'm going to scroll back up, and just in case you cannot see this, I'm going to enlarge it just a little bit. And you probably want to start at your regular income table. And again, here's a pop-up piece of information. So even though we're assuming a 2-week pay, you want to follow the instructions. So your weekly gross pay, let's say it's a 1938. In this case, I've opted to use a calculation. And the calculation, if you go to the upper left here, when I select that cell, it'll show in the formula entry area that I based this on $100,000 annual income. Then I divided it by 12 months, and then divided it by 4.3 average weeks per month. So really, these are average numbers. A lot of these calculations are based on average numbers. Some are exact numbers, some are average. This happens to be one of those averages, unless you know your exact gross pay. So as I showed before, you can edit this, double click, change the calculation, whatever you want. If you know it's a 1938, let's see, your weekly, again this is weekly, gross pay is 2,000. So I get 2,000 gross dollars per month. Now out of that, they deduct $500, and you can use a calculation. For right now, I entered the number 500. I'm going to double click this, and I'm going to go up to the menu bar here, and I'm going to overwrite that and put equals. Let's say it's your deductions are 25% of your gross pay. So you can put 0.25 and then use a star for times. And then if you want, you can either enter 2,000, or you can click the cell and it'll say of that number, and there's your 500. So then it does a few calculations. Now, on some payroll deductions, such as benefits, you have a monthly deduction. In other words, it's not deducted each week, it's only deducted once a month. In this case, I said, oh, well, there's an additional 500 for some particular reason, benefits, dental health, whatever. And you'll notice in red, this is also should be in your discretionary list, but you don't want to double dip. So I can enter this number here. It does some additional calculations, and then here's a good number to have. If you have a current cost, if you're living in an apartment or hotel, you can enter your cost per night or daily cost. If you're living at someone's house and there's no cost, you can simply enter 0. In this particular case, let's say I'm staying at a hotel. I just moved to a new area and it's costing me $50 a night. Well, that could be $130 a night. You don't know. Whatever that number is, you want to enter that in. If it's an apartment, it could be less. It could be 55. We'll enter 55. If you have additional costs, you can enter it here. Okay, now that you've entered your income, you want to go up here and enter some of your personal data for dollars on hand. If you have a checking account, and again, these are selectable, a checking 1, 2, 3 savings, and you can use the scroll bar to check down. In this case, I'm saying, well, in checking, I have $30,000. Well, if you hover over this note, you may actually have $3,300, but I'm recommending at least 3,000, leave out in reserve. And so if there's $3,300 in my bank checking account, I'm going to put 30,000. Now, for this selection on hand, is that money immediately available for use? Not some future use. Do I have it available? If I wanted to spend it today, I could. So you enter yes. If not, you want to say no, and that'll change some other calculations. But the answer for this now is yes. And then if that was no, well, is it available by the time of the closing date? So I say yes here. In this particular case, it's yes in both. And I have some, I selected an other amount. It could be a savings account. It could be, a gift or whatever comes in the form of. I know there's a savings account here. Let's say you have other squirreled away, $20,000. Yes, it's available now. And yes, it's available on closing. If you happen to have an investment, 401k, whatever it happens to be, and you're going to well, I'm going to draw upon that. Maybe there's, let's say 50,000 you can enter here. It's not available now because I haven't pulled it out, but when I get to closing, I'm going to pull that money out and it will be available at closing. So we have a good chunk of money and it sums everything at the bottom. Now you'll see this one row regular income table. This is money in the future that you anticipate from the dollars you entered on the right here. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit because there's another section, extended income evaluation information. This means that when do you want to close and how far out are you from a next paycheck. If you're getting really close, you can enter your expected closing date and this other information. So now that you've entered everything in, you have available cash on hand as of today is 50,000, but as of the date of closing that you selected below is 95. Now you want to scroll down to your house loan or apartment cost. So right now, you read the title here, which says, what do you select? I'm going to use this drop down, and I have all these things to select. I'm going to enter Example Hills 1. And that 10,000 comes from the amount I selected as a down payment in another tab. This particular area is grayed out because now everything is auto-calculated since you made that calculation. So if you have some other dollars you want to enter in, let's say instead of using the 10,000, you want to enter 15,000. It's going to recalculate, and now here it's going to show what your manual closing costs are. So you can either do automated from other tabs, or you can manually enter here. I'm going to go back and reselect, let's see, Example 1 Hills Drive. I think that's the one we had. And you can scroll down and it does some auto calculations. If there are other calculations that have not been accounted for anywhere, you could enter them here. Oops, I forgot there's another 300. This really should be in your discretionary list, but if not, you can enter an additional amount here. You can enter a buffer amount here. In other words, money that I have in the bank, I want to make sure I have an extra $3,000 ready. In this particular case, if you notice at the top, I've selected discretionary costs M139. So what does that mean? So what I've done is to make this selection, I hit the equal sign. I went back to discretionary. I'm going to change tabs here. And I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. So 139. So I think purchase cash flow if living in an apartment. Let me go back to that tab and make sure we made the right selection here. Cash flow analysis. Okay, so I've selected M139. So how much buffer do I want to have? So M, you're in this column here, 139. I say I want to have this additional amount reserved just in case. So let me go back to the tab. And so it's to say reserve that money amount, don't include that in the totals. And so now it has some totaling here and your eventual costs. And at the bottom here, your balance available now and a balance available upon closing. And these colors will change based on these values. It may go orange, may have a different wording, and this is some old calculation information, not critical. But if this says you're not ready to close, the message may say go back and readjust your closing date. So right now it's 8:20. Of course, that's way in the past, and we're going to close this at right now. The closing date is selected. Remember, this is editable. 7/21. So right now it's saying, gosh, you've had so much money, you could have closed back on this old date. But if you had less money, let's go ahead and make an adjustment. This other 20, let's say that's not available. And we can see if that has, and we'll change this to no as well. Money not available, so you're going to only have 25K available at closing. Scroll back down. Okay, so it says your earliest estimated closing date, which is actually potentially in the past. All these numbers are based on the data you entered in the previous tab. So everything is very important that you enter in all the correct data. So this is basically how you enter data in this tab. And just to let you know, this is an open architecture, which means most of the calculations are available to view. In other words, these cells that are in the peach color, if you want to know what calculation is used, you just click on it and it shows the calculation above. If it's a long calculation, you can move this down and see that. There may be more complex calculations. Let me see if I can find a complex calculation. Okay, so some of these calculations are not always straightforward, but it allows you to see where the data is coming from. And remember, this is all protected data, so if you double click, you shouldn't be able to edit it. In most cases, you're allowed to change the size of the row. In other words, if I go up here, I can select this and make that a little bit wider, go back. Same thing down here if I want to make that bigger. But in no event should you attempt to delete any of these calculations or the formulas that produce the calculations. So that shows the purchase cash flow analysis. Can I afford to buy this house? This does not show after I buy the house, can I continue making all the payments? That calculation is going to be shown in the next tab or so. So we'll move on to that next tab. So that is the purchase cash flow analysis tab. We're now switching over to the post-purchase monthly cash flow. So I'm going to select this tab, and what this basically means is after you've made this purchase, can you continue to afford the payments? So there will be personal information that is transferred over in these values. Again, you can't select them. You want to select what person you're talking about, and that person comes from the cash flow analysis. And so person one. And there are additional entries here which are not applicable at this point, and it'll give you some of the same totals at the end. You want to select your property. In this case, remember, we started out with 123 Test Street. I could select that and it changes all the values, but we're not going to use that. We're going to go back to the pre-populated, and you may have to use the up button. Example 1 Hill Street Drive. So it provides some of the total monthly payments, the one-time out-of-pocket costs, and some other data values here, and you can read through those totals. And then it says, well, based on all that information, can I afford, based on my income, can I buy this property? Now, if you have like $5 million in the bank, this is not applicable. This is for those that are on a salary and you have future current income, maybe future dollars. But this is based on your monthly income, which goes back to the weekly and biweekly information that you entered before. So it says, yes, based on your income, you can purchase blah, 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 with an extra $1,900 left over. There's not a lot to this. You just want to make sure you select the right value and double check some of these selections, and it'll tell you, yes, after I can afford to buy the property, but can I afford to maintain keeping the property? And based on all of your entries, it's green, and you can read the note, yes, you can. So eventually we'll add some more information here that may be more useful, but again, the yellow note gives you the information. These red items you can highlight or mouse over to get some of the information that's needed. And remember, if you enter a piece of data that some of these selection green areas cannot have a text entry, some of them, as here, you must select from the drop-down menu, right? So once you do that, then it'll tell you your values, and these are used in additional calculations. Moving on to the post-purchase monthly payments tab, as I'm indicating at the bottom here. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here. This is one of the most critical tabs because it's going to show your loan start date when you select it, all of your payments. It will allow for reducing PMI, additional one-time payments or multiple extra payments towards the mortgage, one-time large payments. Let's say you're going to put a large deposit down on a truck or a trailer or something else. There's a lot of information here, which is very important to understand. So I've zoomed in here, and it shows what's been selected here for the property and some basic information. On the right here, there's some more header information. Your PMI minimum, I said it was 20% before. You can read the comments here. And it has birth dates here for person 1 and 2. You could select person 1 and 2 or not, whatever. This is going to show information as to how old are you when this loan is going to get paid off, and then an additional calculation of if you want to auto recalculate turning PMI off. If you're under the 20% value or whatever value you enter here, it's normally 20%. When can you reduce that payment to the lender? So I'm going to scroll to the top here. It's very important, your loan start date. So in the loan start date, It should be in sync with another date that's been selected, and you'll see the highlight here, loan start date mismatch, select from drop down or change. So in the purchase cash flow analysis cell of K27, there was a different loan start date. If you want to match that date, you can either hit the drop down and select that date, and now the dates match, or you can enter a new loan start date. So this loan start date could be in the past, the present, or the future, whatever you want to have it to be. And it'll show all the calculations, and the dates and everything will adjust automatically. The payments per year, you probably do not want to change that. And again, you can make these other selections. So I am going to reduce the size of this just to show you what this contains. Each column across here is a month of the loan period going out 360 months, all the way to the end. I'm going to scroll real quick out, months and months and months goes out. Let me scroll back. Some of the options that you have are listed here on the left. So I think there's, let me scroll down, there's 7 different options to select from, and then there's summary at the bottom. This table is going to show your true values for where your loan is out, how much needs to be repaid, the current value of your home, the equity, and a lot of other information. So my recommendation is, after you select these various pieces of data, you go section or row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and enter data as needed. So this particular row here has your appraised value of your house. So it was originally appraised at 200,000. We entered that in a previous tab, and if you click that cell and look at the top, you can see that was entered in the loan calculator tab. Now, all of these values throughout the months of the loan, remember, all of these are periods, month by month, the period of the loan. Should you have your property reappraised, you can enter in a new value. And right now, I have it set to 1 equals the previous one, and so forth. So, but you can override that. So let's say I select this particular month here, which your initial appraisal was 200, and look at the top left, the equation is I-27. What that means is it's going to say this month is the same as the last month, is the same as it was before. However, if you have a new appraisal done for whatever reason you're choosing, the property could go up in value or down in value. So let's say it went up in value to 225,000. And again, you'll see it goes further down and replicates that number, and you can change that at any time. And by the way, now that we've done a bunch of data entry, we want to always hit the save button. I'm going to go to the top here, hit the save button, and then now that that's saved, I want to save it as the next revision just so we don't lose information. And we previously had it Rev 2. We're going to go to Rev 3. Okay, so should this file be corrupted or you really mess up something, you can always go back to the previous revision. Then you have the ability to remove PMI. You can either do that manually by saying yes, remove it. However, if you're not within the period of performance where your loan to value is not in the right range, it will tell you too soon and add that in. So I'll just move that back to no. On the other hand, if you want to have it auto calculate and show when, I'm going to turn this on, when is the earliest time I can reduce my payments? Well, based on all the selections, it's going to show PMI required. No, it's not required. And so it'll automatically start reducing that payment. So these are just auto calculations on the spreadsheet to actually reduce your PMI with your lender based on this loan to value rate. Once it goes below 80%, you will need to contact your lender to request a removal of the PMI. If you don't do this request, the PMI will continue even though you've selected auto calc. Um, the lender will still be required of you to make that payment. So when you turn this on, it'll show a month after when you're ready to go. Contact your lender and have that payment eliminated, and that will be affected in the following calculation. So I'm just going to leave that on for the moment. Moving down, here's key points of information. This is just an FYI, some data points of what's required for payments. So you have your base loan payment plus your add-ons and PMI and so forth, and it shows you the various areas of what you're due to owe. If in the event you want to start making early payments on the mortgage, so early payments go towards principal, and you have to specifically request this when you send a payment into your lender. So if you want to start in this particular month and you want to make let's say a $1,000 early payment towards the principal, and you're going to do that every month thereafter, you can enter it here, but you must tell the lender that your additional $1,000 check goes towards the principal. If you can do that for 3 months and then it's back down to 0 extra payments, you can do that as well. But remember, these are equations, and you can simply change that to numerical values. So right here we have, well, I could make 3 extra payments. But in the case that you could do it starting this particular month in 11/5/21, and there you have it. Thereafter, you're going to pay $1,000 a month. Now, just because you show it in the spreadsheet doesn't make it so in reality. Again, you have to actually write the check, send it to the lender, and indicate that this is towards the principal, early principal payments. There's another option here if you have a one-time large payment. This is not towards the loan, but let's say you want to buy a truck, or whatever reason you have a large expense, a one-time, you're refurbishing your kitchen. You can enter in any one individual month. Let's say you're going to spend $15,000 in that particular month. That dollar value contributes to the lower dollars to say, am I upside down? Can I make the full payments? And with the money I'm spending versus income. And in this case, 15,000 makes me upside down. So if I either have to have money in the bank, or this is solely based on your income. Money in the bank to pay for this, or some other situation, but 15,000 is too much. Maybe it's 5,000. Nope, still can't afford that. 1,000 special expense. No, that's still too much. Well, okay, maybe that time you want to zero out your extra payments, and you want to select here. But that is also based on what you're putting into savings and potential extra money into 401k. Beyond this line is here beyond your standard deductions in your payroll. So you want to be cautious on your entries and what you select. So we're going to zero that out. The bottom line here is how much money, after all your expenses, your mortgage payments, the add-ons, extra principal payments, deposit into savings, maybe not 1,000, maybe you can't afford that. Let's say it's $200. And so you'll notice in this case it's not a formula. So for $200, I would have to copy that and paste the value out. Paste. Remember, you want to do paste value, and that'll recalculate everything. So it'll show you, your dollars left over after all your payments. The yellow item indicates how far into the loan you are. So if you select an older date that's still within the range of the loan of today, um, it'll highlight in yellow all that time. So let's go back in time. Today is 7:30. So let's go back in time to, I'm going to double click that, and I can also edit it up here. So let's say last year, year of 20. So the past loan value dates have gone through 7/5. So this is in the past, and the peach color is in the future. And then it'll tell you how far into the loan you are, and you can look at the various numbers. When you go below, further down, it'll also give you a summary. Um, your first month's interest portion, portion of your loan payment towards interest, towards principal only. If you have any add-ons, it'll keep showing you some of these totals here, which are important to know. And now the graph on the right shows you where in the regime of things you are. I'm going to reduce the size of this just so you can see it. And the red line is today, and the black line is the end of the loan. And if you have equity, it'll show all those things. So I'm going to go up here, and let's say this loan started back in let's see, 2015. So you notice that red line moved. This is today's date. Here's the end of the loan. And so it'll show you, how much equity and some of the numbers over here, and how much payments you have, and where your loan values are at. So if you had, right now this is set to a 30-year loan, which is years of loan right here. Let me enlarge that a little bit right here. Years of loan, 30. Well, 30 is based on, let's see, it looks like the loan calculator, row 40, column 44. So let's go to the loan calculator. I'm going to reduce the size just for a moment. I'm going to scroll to the right. What did I say? 40 years of loan. So we're using example 1 address. We have it at a 30-year loan. Let's say you decided to get a 15-year loan. Well, you want to change that to 15. It's going to change all of your calculations, everything throughout, all the tabs. And so if you want to go back to the post-purchase analysis, it'll, and the loan we already selected, it was 2015. And let's go back and make sure the other value is set right. Purchase cash flow analysis, cell K27. Go here to K27. Yep. Okay, what was that date? 7/5/2015. Purchase cash flow analysis. And we want to go to 7/5/2015. Change that to 15. And then go back to the original tab. Dates match up. And we're going to scroll down to the graph. And I'm going to reduce the size here so we can see the graph a little bit better. And you'll see the red line is today, black line is the end of the loan, and it'll show your equity, your principal remaining to be paid, and how you've paid it off. And so all the numbers are interrelated. So this is very important. So once you enter in all the correct data, and 10 years from now, if you're within a 30-year loan and you want to say, hey, I have a one-time payment of $10,000, you can add that in and it'll recalculate everything and show you your numbers. So now that we've done all of our entries, We can either go to a report, which is off to the right, and let me see if I can change this a little bit. There's reports off to the right, or we could use the button down on the lower left to scroll left and look at our dashboard and long summary. These are good options. We've moved on to the Report Attribute List tab, which is to the right of what we just looked at. We were in the post-purchase monthly payments, and now we're looking at the reports. So there's multiple tabs for reports, not all are available. But this report attribute list, this comes from your property of selections of your preferences. So you entered in data for multiple properties, and I'm going to show it over here. Maybe there is test 1 through 3, and then I'm going to reselect to scroll up to example 01 Hills Drive, and all the data will be populated. This column of C shows your preference values. There's an option here where you could select no, don't show the values, and you can print this out and take this with you to a property, and you can enter in your own handwritten information as you go through a property. If you want to show your selected values, it'll show your preferences in column C, and column D shows the particular information for the property selected. So if I was to select example 2, you'll see all the data in column D change to the values in what I selected for example 2. Now remember, information that you entered in other tabs, and in this particular case it was your property evaluation tab, it's going to show that information. If I was to select just a scroll up information, it's going to show NA, and you can overwrite that. After you print it, you can write in your own selections. But again, what it's going to show is all of your preferences that you've selected. So if you go to visit a property, here's your preference list, and then on the right side where all these NAs are, and I could probably have that show up as a blank in future versions, but you can compare your preference list to the actual property that you're newly evaluating. And then you would go in on the left here. I'm going to scroll to the left at the bottom to your property listing attributes. You could re-enter a new property, and it would show up here if you were to select that property, such as, scroll up here, the test 123 Test Street, and then you could still enter in or type in. And remember, you could always go to your file, print, and you could do some formatting for printing. But this is also good to show to your realtor your preference list. If you were just in initial stages of looking for a property, you could NA out the selected values for a particular property, but you could print this and share that with a realtor or email it and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. These are the values that I'm looking for in a property, and it might help them to narrow down a better property for you. So you have multiple selections here. I'm going to go back to the selected property, example Hills. So again, in C it shows my preferences, and in column D it's going to show the specific information for example 01 Hills Drive. We're moving on to the next report, and if you look at the lower section, I've selected tab Report Loan 2, and this will show information based on the loan calculator from the address that you selected in the green cell here. So right now it's at example 2, but we've been looking at example 1, so I'm going to click that, scroll up, select example 1, and it'll repopulate with all the information on what I've selected for that particular loan. Now, if you want to go back, you can select a different property. Um, some of these values have not been entered in, so they show up as zeros. That's why it's important to enter all the data. But we did enter all the data, for example, One Hills Drive, and so there's the information. We're going to be looking at the apartment cost tab, and this tab has been added for those that are living in an apartment, even if you're in a house of a friend or a parent or relative. You may have your own expenses. So let's say you're in an apartment. So this is kind of a user worksheet, and you can enter in all the data as needed, just as a worksheet. It'll give you your cost rents, if you have pets, how much each, the security deposit, and so forth. You enter your own numbers, and these are all fictitious numbers, but um, it's good to know where you're at with your expenses, and you can use these numbers in other tabs. So now there are additional tabs to further to the right after apartment costs. There is user scratch, which the user can openly use for any calculations or typing in of any information. And you'll notice the ones to the right are grayed out because these are items that have not been completed by the developer. The mortgage checklist, the report for the closing, and the potential mods to the tool, which people can add to. But these are three tabs you don't need to worry about right now. Those are future add-ons, and then we'll address those in the future. The tab to the far right, which is called Data Val, is a very critical part to this whole tool and is not meant to be edited by the user. However, since I do have an open architecture, which means you're allowed to see all the equations or most of them, um, this is only for viewing and only meant to be used by the editor. You can see if I click on a particular cell, and I'll enlarge this a little bit. Let me scroll up, that some of these equations, let's see if I can get this right. Oh, it's not going to let me. Okay. So some of these equations are rather complex. All of this data is dynamically updated through all the tab calculations, and I'm going to scroll to the right here, and you can see there's gosh, a lot of information here. This is not to be edited. There's no, unless you're curious, you can look at it. Perhaps in future um, editions of this, this may not be available. I'm going to scroll back out, and you can see this is a huge tab of data and information, but not to be entered or edited by the user. So don't feel like there's anything here that you need to edit. It's just here for informational purposes. So now that you've seen most of the tool, most of the inputs, I'm going to scroll to the left in all the tabs and go just quickly, briefly back to the instructions tab. Again, it's great to follow the instructions. It's good to enter information in these tabs in sequence, although not critical. However, after we've entered all the information, again, we want to make sure we do a save, and then we'll do a save as, and we'll increase that rev number to 04. And you can now go to the dashboard, and so the dashboard should be showing all of the data based on what you've entered on your property, affordability, etc., and the graph showing where your loan is at. You can also go to the long summary and look at those values. And what I would recommend, um, all these tabs are set up as most of them, at least, are what if scenarios. So if you have potential closing costs or actual closing costs, you can go back and change these values as they change, or if you have a particular loan where you can include something, you can change those values. The attributes, you can always change your selections, and you can also add in, gosh, up to I think 30 different properties. And so as you go through these properties, want to make sure you have the address entered, the correct information, and go through your costs. You can update your discretionary costs. If your insurance values change, um, there are some life insurance and vehicle insurance that are on the discretionary costs, which are not part of your income costs. And so you want to make sure you separate those properly. Your personal cash flow, and reduce the size of that. So if your weekly gross pay changes, you're not doing 2,000, you're doing, I don't know, 1,000 a week, whatever it is. You can always go back, and everything across all tabs will be recalculated. And so you can scroll down. Oh my goodness, yes, I can still afford this. And also, it's based on all the data entry points. So as you go through, it's a what if. You can go back and forth. You can change your discretionary costs again, your current living situation, your closing costs. They may be changing based on who you speak with, who your title company is, and get the best numbers. Some of the numbers are averaged out, particularly for the add-ons, that additional payments you would pay to the lender above and beyond your basic loan payment. So these would be items going into escrow. So those numbers, although they may be paid once a year, are averaged out monthly. And so your actual true payments may alter a little bit for your payments to the lender, but your mortgage payments should be showing correctly. um, so your mortgage payments plus your add-ons equals your total payment to the lender. And you can certainly go back and change any of the values as needed, different scenarios, and just keep working it until you get the correct mix for the property you want to buy. But again, remember, after all said and done, you can go back to your dashboard, and see what's going on. Here's a particular, we changed some numbers, so negative disposal income, see column E, blah blah blah. Post-purchase monthly payments. So post-purchase monthly payments, we'll go take a look at that just as a for instance. And let's see, column E. So if we look under column E, yep, there's the red. So it gives you alerts. So something's not right here. So based on your income, I changed the income value. Uh, so you're upside down in some way, and it shows your negative availability. So you may want to have to go back and your purchase cash flow analysis. We dropped that down to 1,000. So let's say it's 1,500. That may upright it. And we can go back to the dashboard and see, no, it's still not good enough. So you can go back and forth and change the values. Here's a particular instance where, can I afford to make payments on this property after I purchase the property? No. So based on the values entered, even though you could buy the property, you don't have enough income for the monthly payments. So you can go back and forth and toy with the numbers and come out with a good successful value. And so overall, this tool is to help you figure out, um, evaluating the property. Can I afford to buy it? Can I afford to maintain the payments on it? And what does my payment plan look like? And so all of these things should help you in your endeavor to purchase a new property. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy using the tool. We're going to show some examples here of using the tool, and right now we're on the same version as we saved it before. But what I like to do is save it to the next rev. So we'll do a save first, save as. Move that up to Rev 05. And okay, first of all, we are on the dashboard and we want to see if we can correct these errors just for the sake of this exercise. So I'm first going to go to, and this example is not pre-planned, but so I'm kind of freewheeling here. It's probably under the either your discretionary costs were too high. I'm guessing it's an income issue. Cash flow analysis. This was set to 2000. We changed it. Let's go back to 2000. Now, I'm just doing this to correct the error. In reality, you want to enter your real income here. So back to the dashboard, and that fixed the error. But let's go back and say under the purchase cash flow analysis, you really were at 1,500 a week. Well, if all the other selections are correct, you're probably looking at a property that's too expensive for you to afford, or you need to save up some more money. So let's see if we can, let's see if we have post-purchase cash flow. Okay, income to cost ratio is too low. There's not enough money. So you're not going to be making enough money to either, you don't have enough money on hand to buy the property, and you're not going to be able to afford it. So we're going to go to the loan calculator, and you can see these purchase prices are too high. So let's just say, using the same example, the house, the asking price was 120,000. So we just change that, and I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see what we're looking at here. So I just change it to 120,000, and let's say instead of putting 5,000 down, you're going to put 10,000 down. So minus 10, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so your base cost is down to 130,000. So let's go ahead and look at the dashboard. Okay, negative disposal income, C, column E, and other columns in tab, post-purchase monthly payments. So we're going to go to post-purchase monthly payments. And this today's date is automatically calculated. That actually is today's date. And this is saying when you're going to start your loan. So the loan start is in the past. So we're going to change that to the current. So we're going to type in 7. Let's say it's going to start tomorrow. Let's say 8/1, 8/1/2021. And now you have this other alert saying there's a date mismatch. So you need to go to the purchase cash flow analysis. And if you can't see the message, maybe scroll it over. Okay, cell K27, post-purchase monthly, purchase cash flow analysis, cell K27, down to K27. Okay, there's the date that's off. So this date has to match the other date, so we're going to say 8/1/2021. And now we're going to go back to the post-purchase monthly payments. And the error went away because these dates now match. And we have PMI AutoCalc on, and let's scroll down to see. So you're still at a negative discretionary. Your costs are too high. So these are some of the numbers you can play with. Let's say you had planned to put 200 a month into savings and an additional 500 into your 401k. Well, your total dollars off are by 508. Let me zoom in a little bit more. So you're off by 508. So we're going to reduce this to, you're not going to be able to put any money into or this is what you decide, and you're only going to deposit 100 into savings for right now. And each of these out values need to be changed as well. So what you can do, we can do a copy paste. So I'm going to highlight these two cells, do a copy, and then move highlight all the way to the far right because we have full 30 years worth of months uh, to paste this in, and you can always change any month value later on. I'm just happen to be changing them all to the same value just for this example. And I'm going to do a right click, paste value, and let's just go back home real quick. And that uprighted yourself. So after all your payments and to the bank, to the lender, which would be your base payment, any add-ons, and your $100 into savings based on your discretionary costs, which are actually disposable um, income here. Let's see. So you're going to have $92 left over in the first month. Second month, you're going to have a few more dollars left over. So then going forward, you can always put more money into one of these. Or if you have a one-time large expense, you can add that here. So you can manipulate these numbers, but it's got to be real numbers that you're working with. And we're going to go back to the dashboard and see what we're looking like. Okay, there's no errors, and we could see this indicator here is going to say how much is your today's monthly payments. Because the loan hasn't started yet, it's out of range. But we could go back and change that to, let's say it started last month. So you'd be 1 month into the loan, or let's say last year, a year ago. So let's say you already have a loan. In that case, you want to, perhaps you're evaluating your current loan and you want to see where your numbers are at. So we're going to go back and find that date. Okay, date of closing. Let's say that was, let's say 2 years ago, or let's say 2015. We'll just put it back quite a ways. So that would have started some years back, and you can enter that new date here or simply select it because you've already entered it elsewhere. So now this is going to show all your updated numbers as though the loan had started back in 2015, and the row with the dates again in yellow are going to be in the past. And if we scroll to the right, you'll see the where the yellow stops. That is today's month, and tomorrow, next month has not started yet. And now you can scroll to the left and look down at your new numbers. You can see based on what you've entered, your equity line, you've got quite a bit of equity. And your current values are going to show here. Today's monthly mortgage payment is $814. You can see the highlight. If you have extra added in, it'll total and reflect that. All those numbers will be again reflected back in the dashboard and the long summary as well. And there are still no errors. One thing you can do, let's say you're starting from scratch, looking at a new property. If you look at your post-purchase cash flow analysis at the top, you have these dollar figures here. Let's say you currently own a home and you're going to sell it and buy a new one, and you're evaluating that new property. So in other two, I can type in equity from, let's say, old property, and you haven't sold that yet, and let's say your equity is 100,000. So I've entered the 100,000 here. However, because you haven't sold that property, cash on hand now is no, that's not currently available. But meanwhile, your other number here is down to 10,000. And let's say that is currently on hand for some reason. It's on hand now, and you're not going to spend it between now and closing. So it will be available at closing. And your equity from the old property is not available now, but it will be at time of closing because you're going to sell it before then. and it's going to update your numbers. And we have the income table problem here. So we'll check the future income, and we're going to have to change some of these dates, I think, to make it correct. We're not in the past, we're going into the future. We'll put it back to 8/1/21. And now your numbers are all in the positive. You can scroll down, and remember there's other selections here. If you're going to evaluate a different property, you're going to select it here. I want example 02. All the numbers will be adjusted. So let's say we're going to switch to example 02, Wave Court. And it'll say, yes, you have enough money to buy it now and also by closing. And this number is the earliest closing date, which is in the past because you have so much money banked away. And we're going to go back to the post-purchase monthly payments. Well, let's look at your cash flow first. Yep, you have enough money. And we have this alert. We need to correct this date because 2015 is in the past. Okay, selected the new date. And you can put your birth date in here. I just, person 1 or 2 or, whatever. If it's just one person, just select the same date, person 1, person 1. I just happen to have 2. And now this alert here, loan dates out of range, because it wants to know your current monthly's payment. Well, the loan is in the future, so you're not going to be able to show what today's amount of dollars would be. And then you can go back to the dashboard, and we can see there's a mismatch in property selection. We selected a different property in one of the tabs. It's going to give us a hint here where to go to fix this. Purchase cash flow analysis, E16. Purchase cash flow analysis, E16. Okay, we're going to have to change that value at another location as well. Let's see. It may be in the post-purchase. So showing example hills, post-purchase monthly cash flow. So you're going to have to scout around here. And there's the culprit. We're using example 2. So the dollars in that example are different than the ones we were doing before, so now we have an error. So now you're going to have to go back and change your numbers to see if you can afford that. Right now you're $400 upside down. So you'd either have to go to, again, your monthly payments tab, and you can reduce this by $100, but you're 400 upside down. So maybe there's a way you can reduce your closing costs. Another way, if you go to the loan calculator, I believe we're using example 2. Let's say you want to put more money down. Let's say you want to put $20,000 down. That's one way to reduce your monthly payments. And we'll see back to dashboard if we still have an error. Okay, so you still don't have enough money. So you're going to have to go back and forth based on whatever property you've entered and selected. Again, if the property value is too high, we were looking at example 2, which is this guy right here, this row. They're asking is 200. Let's say some time went by and they reduced the price. So let's say their new asking price is 190. And then you can also put more money down for in the closing, more than 20. Or perhaps maybe the rate had changed. You could put a new rate in if that's the case. Back to the dashboard. Your disposable income is negative. Still not enough money to buy. So your post-purchase, you're going to need more money. So let's say, I don't know, you're going to tap into some other savings account. So we'll find another savings account. savings, and let's say you have 50,000 in there, and that will be available. And let's say you got a pay raise and now you're 1,800 a month. Okay, so these numbers are looking good. So this says, yes, you can afford to buy the property. So can I afford to make payments? Yes. Can I afford to buy the house? Yes. So you want to go back and forth and you can play around, and the graph here is going to show where your payments are. The blue line is your initial loan amount, and of course over time you're probably going to end up paying more than what the loan is worth because they're charging interest, and your equity is raising up, and for some reason your equity is flattened out here, but oh, it's selected as a 20-year loan. So let's go back and change the 20-year. You want to make it a 30 loan. That will make it more in your favor for your cash flow. And so we'll find out years of loan right here. So we're looking at example 2. Here's the number of years. No, you're going to change it to a 30-year loan. And that's going to make your situation a lot better. So no errors. Again, it's going to show where your payments come out. And this dip here indicates to me that your property was re-evaluated for the value of that property. And we can change the property evaluation, which normally you would not do this. So we'll look in the property evaluation. Okay, here it is. So first, your property evaluated at 275, and for some reason it dropped to 225. Let's say that's not true anymore, and so I'll just say that's going to be equal to that number. Okay, so the property value will not change over the life of the loan unless down the road you get it reevaluated. And I can actually look at that same graph here, and that little hook went away. And so the green line is below 0, so you're negative in equity, but you start getting a positive equity soon, and that will eventually come up to match or be close to what you're paying for it. So those are just a few examples of how you can change the data, get information out of it, where some of the selections are. Some you don't want to change. You know, the PMI, it's probably going to stay at 20%. 12 monthly payments, you probably want to leave that. You can turn PMI auto calc off, and that's going to be reflected in all your payment numbers, and you can see the orange line went up because you're paying PMI in months you don't need it. So you can either manually turn PMI off if you are if your loan to value is correct. Let's see, there's a PMI, reduce PMI. Here it is. So if I wanted to reduce PMI right away and manually change it to yes, it's not going to let you because your loan to value rate is not correct, or ratio. So if I turn PMI auto calc on, it's not going to change here, but if I scroll to the right until I find, there it is. Okay. So in this month right here of May of 31, you're still going to be paying PMI based on all your entries. However, the next month you're eligible to reduce PMI. And again, you'll have to go back and actually request that of the lender. But the numbers will show up here with the new calculations since that box has been selected. And so again, you can go back and forth what if scenarios in your loan calculator. If you have, there's a selection here for the closing. I'm going to reduce the size of this a little bit. For your closing costs, there's a selection here. And you can also, I think I indicated before, you can do buy down points, change your loan value, and we'll find that selection And by the way, I briefly mentioned it before. This is an overriding selection to say don't include any of the closing costs in the loan. So you're going to come out with that out of pocket at closing. Okay, here's the title company. All the data you entered into the closing costs is based on the title company you're using. Let's say we're going to use a different title company, and there's some missing data, so you'd have to go back into the closing costs and fix the missing data. But again, it does allow for an option. Let's see if this one, no. So we had 102, still not 103. Okay, so there's some missing data in the other areas that you'll probably have to fix. But I've tried to make sure that things are highlighted when there's an error, and you want to make sure that you enter as much data in as possible for each of your properties. But again, on different tabs, you can select, well, I'm evaluating 4 different properties, and then you can run your scenarios on each of those individual properties. Here's a quick look. You're in the loan calculator tab. Your base monthly payments just on the loan itself, and then including the escrows and PMI, what I'm calling the add-ons, your monthly payment would be $12.64. So let's go back to the dashboard, and you may have to scroll a little bit, and depending on what your selections are, you're going to see your data show up here. And again, here's your the property that we're looking at. And okay, so there's another mix match in properties. We reselected something, so you go back and fix that. Or I think this is going to fix it right here. We're looking at wave. No, there's still another error. So you're going to look at this error, and you go to those tabs and cells and go fix that data. So it gives a check and balance of making sure you have all your data corrected. But I think once you play around with it a little bit, you'll be able to kind of smoothly go through it. Again, for right now, this is an open architecture. I've got this cell selected with my mouse. I could select off, go back, and it's going to show the calculation used to present that information. Some of these tabs allow you to open that window wider to see the full equation or formula that's in that cell. However, that cell is locked, so if you double click to try to edit, it's going to tell you you cannot edit. And then if you ever need to be, hit your link, instructions, and you go back. So I hope that example helps, and good luck in making your selections.